What's going on, everyone? New York Jets 2025 draft in the books. We are here. We are here to analyze, to put on our GM caps, to pretend we know better than the highly paid professionals, which, to be fair, sometimes the fans, hey man. Hey, we could have had a 14-year playoff drought. We would have done it for cheaper. I would have done it for less money, personally. But that's all behind us. New beginnings, first draft of the Glenn Muji era. Dylan, how did you feel about the draft overall?
I thought it was fine. I mean, yes, I think the fan controlled NFL draft might actually go a little better for some of these teams than on paper it does 48 hours after the fact. Um, I'm not going to sit here and just say, "Oh, we all we have to do is wait and see if these guys become good." No, like there's some good picks, there's some questionable picks, and then there's definitely some reaches, and I think it's a mixed bag, but overall, I'm pretty impressed with the class. I think as we get into it, you guys are going to realize that I view it as a potential of 3+ starters by the end of their rookie contracts. So, and I think it could even be closer to 4 or 5. So I think there's a pathway for these things to work. It's just it all comes down to that X factor right now, which is coaching.
Yeah, coaching. We're gonna find out about these coaches. So let's just do it now, man. Let's talk about our guy, Mr. Smith, man, because it's like, geez, where were you when the Jets drafted Aren Smith in the fourth round? A lot of people are none too pleased about it. And look, I'll start with this because I'm about to feed you some cope, but I try not. We always give you a little bit of dose of the realistic whiskey, but then we put the sweet cope sauce in there because look, guys, I get it. I just don't have it in me to be negative throughout the whole summer. Like if the Jets are 1-6, I'll be on here moaning about it, forehead veins, what. But I don't want to do that before necessary. Okay, so I'm not going to eviscerate this draft class. I'm not going to do it. If that makes me a homer, then so be it. But with Smith, like I think the thing you have to look at is okay, sure, he could end up being just a punt gunner in the fourth round, and it's like that sucks. Now, obviously, they didn't draft him to do that. They didn't draft him with the intention of you're going to be the Irv Charles replacement. No, Aaron Glenn talked about the element of speed he thinks he can add to the offense. And I think with these draft picks, the way I try to look at it is what is an outcome for a certain pick that you could live with. Now, obviously, for Armand Membu, it's like, yeah, you want him to be like a Pro Bowl level tackle, right? And then as the rounds go on, it changes a bit. And with Smith, let's say, okay, obviously you want a starter. You have to get some starters in the fourth round, eventually, of course. And of course, if he's a wide receiver 6 who's just a gunner, that's a terrible pick. But I look at the middle ground, and I think with a coaching staff worth their salt can really raise the floor of draft picks and fill out the middle of this roster that is really lacking. This roster has some former high draft picks on it who Joe Douglas hit on, and they were good. And then and then it's like the rest of it is just roster bubble guys. There's no middle ground. And if Arian Smith can come in and be a wide receiver 4, that's not a starter that you would hope for a starter. It's not a starter, but a wide receiver 4 who, okay, you have 3 starting wide receivers and 11 personnel. Some of them get injured. When he comes in, you feel like he can step in and you're gonna be okay. Maybe he starts whatever 3, 4, 5 games a year because guys get hurt. He's got some packages where he contributes as a gadget guy or just as a decoy, as a deep threat. And then he niches out a role as a core special teamer. Okay, well, let's look at through some of these mid-round picks. And even if you got an outcome like similar to that, how different this roster would be. I'm looking at like Malachi Corley. Now, Malachi Corley, obviously, he was pick 65. Arian Smith was pick 110, and the Jets traded up more to get Corley. So Corley is almost a late second round pick. So obviously, the expectation should be more. Now, let's say we came into this year and we felt confident that Corley was going to be a wide receiver 3. All right, not great, not the wide receiver 2 you'd hope for at that spot, but like, hey, man, this could be a wide receiver 3. That kind of changes, that alone changes how he felt about this wide receiver room because we don't know that with Corley. And then let's say, okay, we took 2 running backs last year. Well, if Israel Banakanda in the 5th round, running back 3, just an RB3 in round 5. Well, then we wouldn't have had to take Isaiah Davis and we'd have a 5th round pick somewhere else to spend. Let's say Carter Warren, we felt like could be a really good swing tackle. And like, man, even if even if he had to play this year, like we could probably survive it, even though he's not long to be a starting right tackle. What if Max Mitchell was like, oh, he's not a starter, but he's a versatile offensive line depth piece that can back up 4 positions.
Mm-hmm.
Like if those two things happen, our offensive line depth is really really good. What if Jeremy Rucker, again not a starter, we felt could be a really good tight end too? What if Michael Clemens we felt could be a really good edge 3 rotational edge piece? Like, do you start to see like the compounding effect of like how much better your team is as if those guys bottom out, it's so much worse. So that's the way I kind of look at this Smith pick is that okay, can your coaching staff raise the floor of these picks to where you start to build a middle of a roster? Can Malachi Moore be just a below average starting safety? It's like, yeah, he's our starter. He's on a rookie contract. It's not anything great, but he's holding that place and he's okay enough to where now we can spend other money elsewhere. That's the way I kind of look at this draft. And I don't see a reason why Aren Smith can't at least do that if our coaching staff is up to snuff. Now, maybe he just doesn't have the hands or route running to be a starting receiver. It seems like that might be a plausible opinion. But you know what I'm saying, man? Like every pick has to be like a home run or horrible. Or like, no, man, if you can get a pick 110, a wide receiver 4 who you feel like can step in when someone gets hurt, core special teamer, I feel like that would be an okay outcome for Smith. Is that too much of a homer take on our friend from Georgia?
No, that's fair. And you could just start playing the mid-round chain reaction of it
Mhm.
all. And you just basically want to get on base with some of these picks. And it
Right.
felt like we were just swinging out of our shoes in the batter's box sometimes. And I'm not saying we're taking swings on guys that are purely upside or whatever, but it felt like when Joe Douglas was in these middle rounds, were the one of two things. He was like the New York Yankees. It's either going out of the park or he's striking out on almost 3 or 4 pitches. Maybe
Yeah.
he's looking at one on the way down. It's not a good place to live. It's good when you hit on your top picks and then you have a couple sprinkled in, and you might only get 3 or 4 starters at most out of a really good draft class. But when you're only coming away with 2 and it's probably your first and second round pick, that leaves a lot left to be desired. And then you do start playing those games of like, okay, now we have too many running backs because Izzy didn't pan out, and now we
Mhm.
could have used a fifth on something else like a safety last year or whatever. So you definitely
Right.
start playing those games. You gotta hope that Aren Smith is better than a wide receiver 6 and a gunner.
Right.
Obviously, I was doing like a little best case scenario for all these guys, and I would assume he's coming in to compete as your wide receiver 3, if not wide receiver 4, right away. And then there's upside to build from there. I would pencil it in as Garrett 1, Josh Reynolds 2,
Oh no.
Corley or Lazard 3, and
Yeah.
then Arian Smith 4/5. I would
Right.
hope that Alan Lazard isn't on the team come August, and we'll just deal with it. And then that bumps him up naturally by default to 4, where he's competing with Malachi Corley. Looking
Mhm.
at his snap distribution, dude, this is not a slot receiver. So people need to forget about that. This is a 6 foot, 185 boundary 3/4 of the time type of receiver.
Yeah,
So
he's a Z.
it's not going to be somebody who's going to line up with Garrett Lazar, or it's not going to be Garrett Corley and Arian Smith in the slot, or whatever it's going to be. He's going to be a perimeter guy, and Corley's going to be the slot guy. And maybe Josh Reynolds probably plays more slot than Arian Smith if I had to project it right now. So yeah, if you can come in and hit the ground running, be a gunner out the gates, but then work up to be wide receiver 4, maybe wide receiver 3. I think that is the best case scenario for him. I don't know how much you watched of him after we drafted him, but
None.
I went back and I watched, let's see how many games. I think it was just 2 games out of the 3 that they had available, Alabama and Texas. And I'm not excusing his 10 drops on 72 targets, 48 catches, absolutely putrid drop numbers.
Mhm.
Dude, Carson Beck stinks, in my opinion. He was a quarterback 1, undoubtedly, at this time last year in those way too early 2025 mocks. Um, it was him and Quinn Ewers, which is just hilarious that Quinn Ewers is now like competing with Zach Wilson to be the backup in Miami, and he was projected to go almost 1 or 2 overall at this time last year. So things changed for those quarterbacks. And I'm not blaming the 10 drops, like I said, on Beck, but there were a lot of plays where I felt Smith got open and Beck just, it wasn't his turn in the progression. And it's not his fault. It's not Beck's fault. And then there's some plays where Beck just throws ducks in Smith's direction and he gets intercepted. There's a really bad one against Alabama and Jahad Campbell. Like he like user lurks him in college football 25 and just like he's right in the passing lane and Beck doesn't see him. So there's situations like that where it's not all Aren Smith's fault. Now, I will say the negative about him is he gets stopped on his routes so many times. You could be playing 7 yards off in like off man coverage, and you get to him in his vertical stem, and you just put a hand on him, and it slows him down, and it throws off the timing of the entire play. So if Carson was looking his way, it disrupted the timing enough where now he's checked out of it. There's also, there's some really bad drops, and they're not like drops where like the pass was outside of his frame or he had to like try to make an extension catch for it. There was an out route against Alabama and he had, off coverage, clean release, about 3-step out. Some people call it an Omaha as a quick out, and he just dropped it right in his breadbasket and he dropped it. And this was a game, I think they lost by 1 possession. So I'm not saying that play determined a lot of things, but the second play of the film that I watched was a deep, like 50-yard pass to him. He had 3 yards of separation right through his hands. So it's just really unfortunate stuff like that. But then he came back and he's playing the boundary, the number 1 up to the top of the screen, and he runs like a sail corner route, and he catches it between the cloud corner and the free safety roaming over, and he displays really strong hands. He catches it outside his frame. He catches it, brings it into his body, absorbs a hit as he's coming down to the ground. So there are things to like, but if you switched him and, like a 5th round pick, if he was a 5th round pick instead of a 4th, everybody's going to be talking about it completely differently. The fact that he is a 4th round pick, everybody's expecting immediate ROI, and that might not be the best thing with Aren Smith specifically. If you get a great value or like a bowl and basket version of Jameson Williams in Aren Smith, sure, I think it's considered a win. But I don't think we should, hang our hopes on him becoming the next JMO. Because I know Detroit has him and AG loved him and there was some similarities, sure, but there's a difference when you're drafted 3 rounds apart in terms of what potential you have in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if he can, I saw a pro comp of like Mecole Hardman. I'm like, all right, man, that might be more of your speed right there.
Oof.
Yeah, I think with Smith, well, I think it's the receiver room is obviously not very good. So, to me, I just look at each pick as like, is the value good enough for that pick? Not necessarily like, I don't know. I think some of us like the draft ended and it's like we still have this hole. It's like, yeah. You were going to in
Yes.
some capacity there are going to be some of those holes. Yeah, with Smith, I definitely think if there was something else to grab onto, like if he was 21 instead of 23, or if he didn't have the injuries, or if he was 6'2" with long arms and 205, like if there was give me one other thing, man, here, but like a smaller guy who's injured and drops passes, like for fans, it doesn't mean you have to rewrite the guy off right away. I do think it's fair to in the same way that Azariah Thomas. It's fair. I think it's valid for us to look at him and where he was projected to go and say, hey, man, we might have gotten a steal here at pick 73. Yeah. In the same way we say that, I think it's fair to look at Smith and say, I wonder if we could have gotten him a couple rounds later. But that's the first one in the off the books. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned like when you don't get that floor on these mid-round picks, and then you have to compound by then reaching a free agency, like even Michael Carter the second, or not the first Michael Carter running back. Okay, he didn't really work out as a running back too. Then the Jets spent $8 million to sign Dalvin Cook. In the draft when we got Olu, if the Jets felt like, you know what, Carter Warren is like a serviceable tackle who we can survive with, like the kid that the Commanders drafted last year in the 3rd or 4th round, and he started the whole season. Now they traded for Larry Tunsil because he wasn't good enough, but he got them through a season and they made a playoff run with him. So if Carter Warren was at that level, then maybe they don't waste $10-12 million on Tyron Smith. So you have to keep throwing good money after bad when you don't hit that floor. So let's at least hope he hits that floor for Armand Membu, obviously much higher. Oh, one thing I want to mention before I forget. I did like on the on the phone calls. First of all, like Darren Muji and Woody Johnson is like, have you never? Did you forget how to have a conversation? Like
Yeah.
Darren Muji is. I don't even. I think he might be AI. I think they are trying to have the first. Like Woody Johnson really wants to cut costs, and he just has like Chat GPT in like a gesture, and that's Darren Muji. But I like with Tanner Engstrand and Coach Glenn's on the phone, they said repeatedly, "We have a plan for you." To all the players. Now, again, I get it. You can come back and they don't win a lot of games, and you're like, "Oh, but the Buffalo Jet fans said they had a plan for him." I get it. I got it, guys. All right, I understand. But yes, please have a plan for these guys because I want more Jamie and Sherwoods. Jamie and Sherwood is such a perfect example of a player that they drafted and they had an exact plan for. Like you're a college safety, and we have a plan here. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's what you're going to be the finished product. The kid works his ass off, and it finally pays dividends. And now he's like a really good starting linebacker. We need more of those. You need to have a plan. The plan for Armand Membu is you're going to slide in a right tackle and kick ass. What did you think about them coming away with Membu? I mean, not much of a surprise, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I came on your show after round one, super
Mm-hmm.
thrilled. I was not a big advocate of taking Tyler Warren at 7. And I think we're already doing the thing with Mason Taylor where people are like, don't expect a ton of production out of a rookie tight end because historically it's not a thing. And I know Brock Bowers is the outlier, but we're already doing the tight end thing. So it makes way more sense when you add in the fact that we've solidified our right tackle in the first round, and then you go attack tight end in the second round. Yeah, best case scenario, Armand Membu, unquestioned starting right tackle 1 in camp. He's, probably a multi Pro Bowl, hopefully an all pro type of guy in his rookie contract, not saying year 1, but this is a guy that you would expect to come in and it's plug and play. There's no, not going to be any hiccups. I mean, yes, there's going to be the rookie warts, but it's not going to be like, oh no, this is a liability out here. He's allowing 4 sacks in week 1. Like, say we play
Right.
the Steelers week 1, and he's got to go up against Highsmith and Hayward and TJ Watt and all those guys. They just got Derek Harmon and Keanu Benton. Like, they're loaded on the D line. If he
Mm-hmm.
comes in and allows like 2 sacks, whatever, it's not terrible. But if he's consistently allowing 4 sacks a game and like just pressure out the ass and Fields is running for his life, then we'll understand like this is not as good of a pick as we all thought. But I don't think that's the case with him. His elite first step out of his stance in pass pro to like get to the landmark is going to help him a lot. And I think his tenacity in the run game is going to help him even more on this team that is, going to be very run centric. So to me, I'm not worried about Membu failing or being a bust necessarily. Obviously, there's still the chance, but I feel like he was one of the safest picks that AG and Muji could have made as their first ever draft pick for this team. And I think it goes a long way when you pick a safe guy, because if Joe Douglas picked the safe guy all along, we might not ever have to draft Armand Membu because Tristan Wirfs would have been our right tackle for the last however 6 years since that draft in 2020. So you can keep going and doing the chain reaction of stuff, but I don't have any problem with Membu being the starting right tackle out the gates. Don't even, give him we're going to compete with Carter Warren and see what happens. No, I would just hand him the keys to the right tackle spot. And if you have to put a tight end on him occasionally, like 40% of the time against really good rush defenses, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, he's definitely be a starting right tackle. They might have to do the coach speak thing of competition, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what got lost in debating Membu versus Warren is we were really hyper focused on the positions and the team need. Is that we really didn't talk about like Armand Membu is a really good football player, and that's what
In
the
a
whole
really good
process.
conference too.
Yeah, and he seems like a really good dude.
Mm.
But I think that was the missing part of like we're going back and like Warren too. I'm not going to pretend just because Tyler Warren didn't go to my football team. Like if I was the Colts at pick 14, I would have ran that card in for Tyler Warren. I think that was
Yes.
an awesome pick for them. I would have been happy if they picked Tyler Warren, as long as they didn't pick a defensive player not named Mason Graham. I was going to feel pretty good coming out of week 1. So
Mhm.
yeah, they did one of the things that I think it was reasonable for them to do. But through the whole debate of like why we shouldn't take this guy, no one ever said it's because he's not an awesome offensive line prospect. So that's what you got to convince me of to say he's not worthy of taking in this spot. You
Right.
mentioned the foot speed is awesome. Um, he very rarely got beat around the edge with speed or finesse, and he's very patient, and he didn't really get goaded on a lot of moves where guys like faking in and trying to get his hands down. He didn't really go for a lot of that stuff. He's very patient, very clean in pass pro. Now the run blocking, I think, is definitely it's very similar to Olu last year. He's not as good of a prospect as Olu. Um, I don't think it's super far off. Like probably we're like probably I don't know, not that far off from Latham. I think better than Fuanga from last year. So in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
realm of guys from
Mhm.
last year,
He'd have been a first
um,
rounder last year.
yeah, he would have went in the top 20 for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a much different draft class. But the run blocking, I think there's some awareness lapses in terms of not
Mhm.
always hitting his targets. But and I know he gets a reputation for being super finesse, but he does have a bit of a mean streak. He'll be an enforcer. I like to see him do that more consistently, play like an asshole more consistently.
That
Like
Oklahoma game, man. Bring that to New
yeah,
York and you'll be fine.
yeah, and was man, and the I would say Texas A&M as well. And they
Yeah,
had
he
some
did kind
really
of
really
bully
good
my
pass
guy
rushers.
Shamar, and you saw that happen with Shamar against the top two tackles, Will Campbell and Armand Membu. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely a thing that he can hang with the top talent. And like I said, SEC, like you're going against the top talent as it is. So
right. And I would say probably the biggest weakness would be the awareness in picking up stunts and having that kind of sense of where multiple rushers are coming from. But when it's just him versus another dude, and I'm trying to keep my quarterback clean, like he's ready to do that. And I think the same thing we talked about with Olu last year is you'd rather the player come in with like NFL ready pass pro and then improve the run blocking because you got to keep your quarterback clean. And I'm not saying run blocking like he's going to be a liability, but
mhm.
the run block. I don't think year one you're going to be like, holy crap, Armand Membu transformed our run game immediately. But he's 21 years old on draft night, which is a theme. So he's got a ton of potential. He's young. I think he's bringing a high floor because of the pass protection profile is really good, and it's a premium position. I don't understand why people think left tackle is like twice as important as right tackle. Yeah, as long as quarterbacks are mostly right-handed, it'll be more important. But you're out of the gun so much more. Quarterbacks can see things coming. Like try having like I don't know. Have we've lost games because you had a bad right tackle. I mean, I remember
For
Will
sure.
McDonald going up against Broderick Jones, and it's like, oh, they can't deal with this, right? And
Yep.
teams will move their guys around. If you're weak at one spot, a team is going to move their rusher to your spot and expose where you're weak. So if you look at okay, quarterback most important, then left tackle, edge, your wide receiver one, then right after that, I would say right tackle is as important as any other position, as shutdown corner, as good defensive interior. So one of the
Mhm.
top 5 or 6 most important positions out of 22 starters. So positional value, check. Talent relative to the class, check. Team need, check. I'm good with it, man.
Yeah.
I like Armand
That
Membu.
checks all the boxes. There's not much, I guess, negative that you could say on a surface level about him until you get into the film, like you said. And then there's some nitpicking things, some technique in the run game, a little bit more, like you said, awareness and picking up stunts and things like that. The Texas A&M game, I'm looking back at my notes. He had a couple, reps that he wanted back against like Scorton or things like that. There's another guy that's coming out in future classes. His last name is Howell, who I already wrote down for I think 2026 plus, and waiting to see what my database says about him. But then he has another bull rush win against Stewart, another good win against Stewart on a big touchdown pass. He loses on an inside swipe by Scorton, but then he gets helped by the right guard, so it doesn't look like a total loss. So like, there's gonna be things like that about a guy playing on an island like right tackle that have some, I guess like some warts in his film, so to speak. But yeah, man, checks all the boxes. Got a first round grade for me. Athleticism, length. I think they're all elite, comparatively to the class at least. And this is a guy I'm really excited about, not just because he was a guy that I personally wanted, but because all those things that we just talked about, all those boxes he's checking. He's an AG guy too. The tenacity that he's bringing, I really think he's going to come in and be a focal point of this draft class and prove what type of players AG and Muji are looking for going forward.
Yeah, man. And It's interesting to look at. Like, I don't think the Jets. Like, I don't think any one of us is predicting the Jets to make the playoffs this year for
No,
sure. Looking at the offseason the Patriots had, I'm like, oh man, where are we stacking up in this division? But I
true.
think if the offensive line is as good as we think it can be, which it's not a crazy projection because like the interior trio was really good last year. They were one of the best pass protecting interior trios in the NFL last year. The Jets gave up a lot of sacks, like I don't know, like 12th in sacks allowed, but it's like, yeah, dude, they threw the ball 600 times. Like they threw the ball the second
Right.
most
Yeah.
amount of times in the NFL. So their sack percentage was pretty low considering that the quarterback had the second worst pressure to sack rate. Now Justin Fields comes in and he's not any better at that. I don't
Right. He's
understand that.
actually
So
worse at that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's the only guy who is worse at sacking
But
himself.
we don't have
Yeah,
Tyron Smith for a quarter of the season
right.
making those stats real bad because I felt like it got better
Yeah.
when Olu came in.
Yeah, there was two games. It was Denver and Minnesota where it was like, holy crap. It was like the 2023 offensive line where it was like, man, we're just there was actually three games. It was Denver, Minnesota early, and then Buffalo late. That was when Max Mitchell and Carter Warren had to play, where it was
Yes.
like just atrocious offensive line play. But other than that, I think we struggle to like look at things relative to the league. Like, oh, this Titman's not that good, ABT's not that good, Simpson's not that good. Don't crown Olu yet. It's like, dude, look at the guys you named and look at the offensive lines that are around the league. The Jets had better pass protection than the Chiefs did. They
Yeah.
objectively did. They had
Oh, yeah.
look at I mean, look at the Steelers offensive line last year. Like the Jets were better. The Jets had better offensive line last year than a lot of playoff teams. Now, obviously, schematically, their run game was disgusting, probably the worst in the NFL
Yes.
from a schematic standpoint, and their tight end blocking was gross. So that was a big hindrance to their ability to run block. And but yeah, man, so it's not like a crazy projection because you have the four starters coming back who you know are good, and now you're just saying, okay, can our number 7 overall pick be, right away, I don't know, a top 10 right tackle? I don't think it's a crazy ask.
No.
And if our offensive line coach is better than Keith freaking Carter, these aren't crazy asks. You're gonna have a really good offensive line. And there aren't usually a lot of terrible teams with good offensive lines. Now, so
Mhm.
I think squaring off that unit really raises the floor of what this team can accomplish. Again, not saying they're going to be a playoff team, but you have one really awesome unit, so I like that.
Yeah,
Tight end.
there's a lot of question marks with like New England's offensive line, I would say, in the division, but I
Okay.
would comfortably put the Jets as number 2 in the division. I think Buffalo's got, the bookend tackles that are really good. They got a couple interior pieces that are good. Miami, I wouldn't put them in the conversation. Like I genuinely think the Jets have the second best O line, at least on paper, and like projecting out this season, second best in the division for sure.
Oh, they better with the resources that they've put into it. And with Buffalo, I would actually say like if you go just talent for talent at each spot, you can make an argument the Jets could be as talented, but
Mhm.
Buffalo is they have continuity. They're so
They
well
put it all
coached. And
together. Yep.
yeah, they put it all together. They've been there, done that in the playoffs. And Josh Allen, talk about pressure sack rate. Like Josh Allen helps out his offensive line in a way I truly have never seen it a quarterback do. It's
Yes.
preposterous. Some of the sacks he gets out of.
Mhm.
So then they come around and get Mason Taylor in the second round. So we were talking tight end, offensive line kind of combinations, same as last year. Like you get the weapon first or the offensive lineman first. They went offensive line first and weapon second again. What did you think of Mason Taylor? Pretty chalk first 2 rounds. Like that was a popular mock draft for the Jets going Membu and Taylor.
Yeah, I said this on Jake's mega stream for night two. I was like, wasn't this predicted by a couple of people on the beat almost a month plus ago coming out of the combine? It was like, oh, if the Jets were able to, we'll do a 2 round mock and it's Membu and Mason Taylor, and everybody's like, oh my God, that'd be great. And yes, that is great. And it happened. And I don't think it's a sign of there's leaks in the building. I think it was just so obvious what the Jets' top 2 needs were entering this draft. And yes, we can all point to defensive tackle being a huge need from a fan perspective. Inside One Jets Drive, they told us what they thought about the defensive tackle room. It's clearly
Right.
not as bad as they thought because they went offense, cornerback, offense, defensive back. So I think that goes to show like how they feel about it. But the Taylor pick specifically, I didn't. I'm not over the moon. I love the player, and I think it's a great fit, and he's immediately going to be our tight end one. Like Jeremy Ruckert is hopefully that, more efficient tight end two that we just talked about. He's going to come in and be the tight end one right away. Most prolific pass catcher at the position in LSU. He set the record for most catches in a single season last year with 55. People are going to say, oh, but he only had less than 600 yards or whatever it was. And it's like, okay, but on a LSU team that's full of all the studs that we know that they're full of, and they still had a couple this past year. I'm blanking on their names, but I know they had at least Kyron Lacey. Obviously, the tragedy that happened with him. They did have another wide receiver, but the year before, he's got Neighbors
And
and
BTJ.
BTJ. Yeah, he's got
That's
all these guys.
crazy.
Yeah, he's got all these guys
He's
ahead
got
of
like
him, and he's
2 guys who are top 10 receivers in the league as rookies.
exactly. And and truthfully, like in my opinion, like off the field stuff aside, Kyron Lacey was a top 100 pick
Mhm,
going into the process. Like he was
mhm.
that effing talented. Like it's such an unfortunate thing. So like he's buried on the depth chart of pass catchers, and that's not going to be the case with the Jets. But they had a game-winning situation. I want to say it was sometime last year, maybe late the year before, when they had all the guys. They went to Mason Taylor on a little slide route in the red zone and threw it to him. So like he is relied upon by his quarterback, and I think that's exactly what we're going to get with him in the NFL. He needs to obviously progress as a blocker. He is your prototypical Y, though. So me personally, when I'm looking at tight ends on film, I gravitate to the guys who are a prolific Y or prototypical Y, and then they can moonlight as your F tight end and be your power slot on occasion. I'm not, let's be the power slot first and then go put your hand in the dirt and be mean and nasty. I would take the mean and nasty side first. So Mason Taylor does need to develop as a blocker, probably needs to get that little mean streak going, and maybe playing next to Armand Membu a lot is going to help him develop a nasty. But his hands over the middle, you mentioned it on Jake's show, man. He doesn't body catch. He uses his
Mhm.
hands. And I think it's so like simple to overlook with pass catchers that they just don't pull it into their body immediately. They catch it, tuck it, and then go. And a lot of people, they just immediately body catch, and that's not a great thing. It's not conducive for long-term consistent success. So to me, I would give it like a B plus, just based on all the boxes that I think he checks. Is it the person I would have picked at 42? Maybe not, but I do think it checks all the boxes to the point where it makes it a great pick. And the plan, I'm going to use air quotes because we don't know exactly what the plan is, but the plan that you can kind of assemble in your head for Mason Taylor, he's going to be your 2B behind maybe Breece Hall as a pass catcher. It's going to go Garrett, Breece, Mason, and then your next
Mhm.
wide receiver, at least in my opinion. So it's not going to be, oh, he's buried behind talent at LSU. He's going to be more of a focal point, and I think that's going to be really exciting for him.
Yeah, and if he could do that at a tight end, it's a lower developing position. Now it's starting to pop a little bit more because you do have guys who were taken high recently, like obviously Brock Bowers is kind of his own thing. But before him, Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid, who were late first to second round picks, who were pretty productive early on in their career. And with Taylor, we talked about it in our last video before the draft, why we preferred the Jets not waiting until 73 to get a pass catcher, because we wanted somebody who could be that, like your third in targets behind Garrett and Breece immediately, not some player like Smith. Like if he was their only, like if they took a safety in round 2 and then Smith in round 4, now it's like, okay, we didn't really get a needle moving pass catcher immediately for Justin Fields. And now that's just someone who's in the mix, like with Tyler Johnson developing and all of that. But now you're getting someone who, just because of the, like, dude, I mean, look, I get he's young, but dude, you're a top 50 pick. The depth chart is Stone Smart and Jeremy Ruckert. Like he should be the starting tight end. Right? I don't think that's crazy to ask. Does he have to get 1,000 yards or anything? No, but he should be the starting tight end. And Dylan, it's crazy to say this. I will say this to you. It is factually true. It sounds absurd, but it is factually true. If Mason Taylor just hits as a normal second round pick, just like, okay, you look back, you're like, that was worth a second round pick. He will probably be, at a minimum, the second most productive tight end in Jets history, because I'm looking at the all-time receiving leaders for tight end in Jets history. This is probably the most anemic position in our franchise's history. It's worse than quarterback. We have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and we had Chad Pennington, who was a good starter for a while. Even like Ken O'Brien
And
was okay
O'Brien,
for a while.
Boomer,
Like,
and all those guys were
and
solid.
Vinny
They're
for a
not.
couple years, right?
Yeah.
Um, but so Mickey Schuler has just under 5,000 career receiving yards, and then all the way a drop off to Castor with 3,300 career receiving yards as a
He's
Jet.
number 2.
He's number 2. So, and then you got Jeff Cumberland is top 10.
What's Jeff at? What's Jeff got?
Jeff's got 1,100 yards as a Jet. Tyler Conklin is 7th. See, it's Tyler Conklin, and we
With
could have
just
brought
the Jets or career yards?
just with the
Not.
Jets, just with the Jets.
What's
So
Conklin at? 7th with how many?
1,600. See, we could have brought Conklin back for one more year, and he could have been in the Ring of Honor.
I'm gonna go a hot take. I'm gonna go a hot take and say that Mason Taylor does more than that. How many years was Conk here for? 4?
3
Okay. I was gonna say
on his.
I'll give Mason Taylor his rookie contract to get more yards than Tyler Conklin. So he gets 1 extra year than
Yeah,
Conk did.
he
But
better.
that's only averaging 400 yards a season. And I know it doesn't
Yeah,
sound like a lot, but if you got 400 yards out of your third pass catching option, that's not terrible in what we think is going to be such a run heavy offense anyway.
yeah. For the first year, that's fine. I think you'd obviously the expectations would go
It's going to
higher
scale. Yeah.
from there, right? So yeah, but like just if he gets like, I'll put it this way: if he's good enough to get a decent second contract from the Jets, like he could just
Top
have
3. Yeah.
minimum top 3. Dustin Keller is at 2,800 yards, so
Yeah.
it's pretty bleak. And there was a little bit of a run on tight ends after that, like Ferguson, Arroyo went. I don't know if Fannin went for pick 73, but there was a pretty good run on tight ends. I'm glad they got that done. I think somebody like Terrence Ferguson might be a little bit better right now, but they're betting on the upside with Taylor. I do think, and people say he doesn't have an elite trait, which I don't know if he has an elite physical tool, but being really damn good at catching the football, to me, like if we're gonna, if it's the end of the world that Aren Smith has a lot of drops, which it's a valid criticism. Let's be honest, it's way too high. I think it was the highest in college football on catchable targets. Okay, well, to me, then we should be excited that Mason Taylor had a 1.8% drop rate, and he's got some nice wins where it's not like it's not like when Brock Bowers mosses that DB and plucks it out of the clouds and then runs for 60 touches. It's not athletically like that, but he's got some nice contested catches where like there's a ball thrown in traffic and you're like, and you can't tell right away, and then you see the replay and you're like, oh wow, he like actually snagged that. That was pretty crazy. Like, be able to use late hands, good balance and leverage. So I think he's just gonna be like a solid one of your Dallas Goedert type of tight ends. It's just a solid. He's your starting tight end in 11 personnel and could be a good security blanket for Justin Fields, who is going to pepper the tight end position with targets a ton. I mean, Cole Kmet had a 700+ yard season with Justin Fields. So I like it was a position of desperate need, and the talent pretty much matched. He was like basically people thought he was the 45th best player in the class. So
if you
just
went
felt
to
like
the
it
Chiefs
lined
at
up.
31, nobody bats an eye.
I thought if Josh Simmons wasn't there, I think they might have done that. So I don't think it's a crazy steal. It's not a reach. It's just all right, cool.
It's good value at the pick. You took a guy in the range. You didn't go outside the box and do the thing where the Jets are smarter than all 31 other teams and they know something we don't know. Like they didn't do that. And I think it's important. I think it's important to note too, against South Carolina, they asked him to do a lot of one-on-one blocks against Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. And Dylan Stewart, again, another future prospect at edge coming out of South Carolina who's going to be special. Like Kyle Kennard won Defensive Player of the country last year, and I feel like Dylan Stewart is going to push to be that as well. So like he was asked to go one-on-one with some of these long, physical, big edges at South Carolina, and he was holding his own. So like it's not a matter of he's so bad at blocking, he has to develop it from the ground up. There's a foundation there of blocking, and I always think it's funny. Glenn, my co-host on Jet Nation, he always goes, there's 2 types of blockers in college at tight end. The ones who don't block at all and the ones who get in the way. And Mason Taylor definitely gets in the way. Like he shows a willingness to want to get in the way too. So I think that goes the extra, like, a little extra bump where I feel like the development of his blocking is not going to be something that's so tragic that we can't have him in on first down at 1st and 10 if we want to come out in 12 personnel and run duo. I think he would be fine for that. So I'm excited for him. Probably the most out of like the offensive picks. Obviously, Membu, you get excited for because he's just going to be boring at best, and you don't hear his name called. But Mason Taylor, I really think like has a chance to flash this year and moving forward.
Yeah, with the blocking, I would say I would expect his blocking immediately to be like a net neutral, like not really helping you or hindering you. Like it's not something you're gonna have to scheme around as a weakness.
Not
But
that
it's not
Bates
also
guy we signed.
correct. Yeah, and tight end blocking I think really just raises the floor like of your gosh, it was I really can't believe we lost like the Vikings game is crazy in a game where we threw 3 picks, including a pick six. We missed 2 field goals. You had Alan Lazard drop 4 passes, including a touchdown. And still, we would have beat a really good team in a neutral site if we just didn't play Brendan Bates in a football game. Rewatching that game, so yeah, it should be improved. It should be improved from there. But yeah, I don't think it's something you're gonna have to scheme around, nor is it something that you're going to lean into as a strength. Like, oh, we're running behind Mason Taylor today, not right away. But no, honestly, none of the tight ends that were drafted in the first 3 rounds were like that. Like Jackson Hawes is like that. Okay, Mitchell Evans a little bit, but those guys are day 3 picks who are I don't even know if Jackson Hawes got drafted. I didn't see, but
he did.
Did he?
He's
Where'd
in
he
the
go?
division.
Did Brable get him?
Buffalo.
Oh, see, Buffalo had a good draft. I hate to say it, man.
And as we get into this next prospect, Jackson Hawes got into the head of Azareye'h Thomas on film every time.
How so?
Dude, out on the edge blocking, 85 never let go of 8. Every time I watched him, Jackson Hawes inside the pads of Azareye'h Thomas. See you later, get out of the club. And that's not a bad thing for Azareye'h Thomas. Like, we know Jackson Hawes is a very physical blocker, touted as the number 1 blocker in this class.
Right.
You're coming out of Georgia Tech, for Christ's sake. Like, they run the ball 85% of the time. Like, you have to run block to even think to go there. But it seemed like anytime he got out on the edge against Azareye'h Thomas, it didn't go well for Thomas. I don't have any clips to pull of Thomas. I have some from Smith that I'll use later this week, but it was the only bad thing about Thomas on film that immediately stuck out to me was he could not get off Jackson Hawes' blocks. And now the fact that he's in Buffalo just kind of pisses me off because now we have to see it twice a year. But as we get into Thomas, there's a lot more to like than dislike.
Yeah, with him, I think the first 3 picks, like if we're looking back at this draft class, and Membu is like a top 5 right tackle, and Mason Taylor and Azareye'h Thomas are starters, I think that's plausible. And if you look back like round for round, like that outcome would be pretty good for the Jets history. Like we had that one draft for 3 first-round picks. But yeah, with Thomas, I think once we got out of the first 2 rounds, they really squared away those first 2 acute needs and the talent matched. And both of those 2 picks were to help Justin Fields. Great. Then they were in a spot where, again, I'll never know, but I'll always believe they were going to take Kyle Williams. I think they were going to take Kyle Williams, and I think they wanted that tackle from Kentucky that the Bills sniped them for. Obviously, the Bills thought that because they wouldn't trade up if they didn't think that. So, yeah, Brandon Beane sniped us a little bit.
Defensive line ahead of the Jets. They took TJ Sanders in round 2, right before we took Mason Taylor. They took Landon Jackson, the pick before we took Azareye'h Thomas. And then in the 4th round, they traded up and took Deion Walker ahead of where we took Aren Smith.
All 3 of those picks would have made sense for the Jets. I am glad they didn't. I would have still preferred Mason Taylor with Sanders on the board in round 2.
Same.
But and I definitely would have liked Deion Walker. I
would have, but
well, I'll also say this too. Like, okay, again, I don't want to make this the Cope podcast. I truly don't. But that's who I would have preferred. If like full transparency, if the Jets came away with like Kyle Williams, even if they had to trade up for him a little bit, because they traded up for some other guys, they traded for Kyle Williams, and then they were able to get Deion Walker, I would feel better about the outcome than what they got. Right? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think we are massively overvaluing the present, and I think the ability of once we got into day 3, how much those picks would have changed the like acute holes on the team. That's not to say day 3 picks can't hit, but when they do, it typically takes a lot longer. For the example of Sherwood Sherwood, it wasn't until his 4th year. We had to pay him right after that because it took him 4 years to finally develop into that player. Even Bryce Huff, who popped as a UDFA, was his 3rd season where he really started to put it together as a situational rusher. Even Tony Adams, like his 3rd season, he finally, I guess he wasn't a good starter, but he was a starter. It takes a minute. So even if they took a 5th round defensive tackle because we needed one, and I would have preferred that they did. I wanted a defensive tackle over that linebacker they took as well. But there's a really good chance that if they took that player, like the coaches would have played Derek Nottie over that dude. The coaches might have played Leonard Taylor, who has a year under his belt, over that dude, or Cowart, which I keep saying the wrong Cowart because the Jets had Sam Cowart. It's Byron Cowart, I believe. Yeah. There's a good chance that dude would be like inactive some weeks and playing like the 5th round pick or playing like 11% of the snaps. And then maybe like next year, Nottie leaves and he takes a step forward and he's starting. I still would have preferred, I would have preferred that, but that doesn't necessarily solve the immediate problem. Like, I don't think it's realistic to say we could have solved all these holes with day 3 picks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think also what needs to be mentioned is I use my grading sheet. It's straight from the draftnetwork.com. Like between this number and this number is a 1st round pick, and it just cycles all the way down. From a 5th round pick, it is between a 70 and a 71.99. So basically a 70 to a 72. A 7th round pick is a 66 to a 68. That difference is so minuscule when it comes down to it that, yes, the guys that they signed in UDFA, like Fatorma and Peyton Page from Clemson, those guys are maybe like in the same bucket as the guys that they're passing up for the guys from Miami, Kiko and Tyler Barron in the 6th round. So again, that's maybe just a little bit of copium, but I don't think the difference, like when they got to the pick where Shadur was getting picked, 144, I heard on a broadcast asking if Dion was just going to call it and allow him to go to UDFA so he can choose where he goes instead of being drafted somewhere. So that just tells you, like, even the players are thinking like, okay, maybe I just want to be undrafted. So, you get a little bit more money, you get to pick where you go. But the difference between a round 5 and a round 7 or a priority free agent is so marginal at that point that I can't fault them for taking a guy who they view higher on their board over a defensive tackle. Would I have liked it? Yeah, I absolutely would have loved it. I was screaming trenches from the rooftops, but dude, the value they got in Azareye'h Thomas and, in my opinion, Malachi Moore at 130, huge in my opinion. Like, you're changing your entire back end now. You have 6 competent players on that back end now. Like, if you want to go like dime or big nickel and you need like 3 safeties, you can do that now. And Tony Adams is your 3rd best safety, or it's Cisco, Stevens, Moore, and then you can still have Thomas, Carter, and Sauce on the field. So like, you can do so much now that I feel like the positional, I wanted a defensive tackle or I really loved this player, we kind of need to pull ourselves away from that and then just like evaluate the talent on the board, because I think these are steals compared to Arian being a reach.
Yeah, I think, Daniel Jeremiah says he only ranks 150 players because typically that's how many players he has a draftable grade on. Okay. Whereas after that, they're all kind of in a similar bucket. Now, I guess the pushback would be, well, it was a very, very deep defensive tackle class. So maybe it was a unique situation where you really could have gotten a starter quality in the 5th round relative to other spots. Yeah, they should. I'm very surprised they didn't come away with a defensive tackle. I would have put a lot of money on that prop. That the Jets would have drafted at least
and Buffalo
one.
Clearly did, because they kept jumping us to snipe us for them. And it does suck when Ty Robinson is the pick after Aren Smith, the Nebraska defensive tackle who went to, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, this is the guy I was comping as like, he's like the white JFM, so to speak. Like, I thought he was actually going to be really good and be like a tweener role, and I mocked him to the Jets a couple weeks back, and like, I really liked the player. But yeah, it's one of those things where they viewed it differently, and
I'm looking at his sheet now. This would have been enjoyed. I won't lie. Ty Robinson looks like he would have been enjoyed.
We would have enjoyed us some Ty Robinson. Don't get me wrong, but But again, you have to, think relatively. They think Noddy is going to play a premium role, at least in my opinion. They think Leonard Taylor showed some flashes where he can rotate in. Maybe Tufele, Cowart, or Fedarian Mathis even. Fedarian Mathis, I feel like, is being totally overlooked in this scenario. Not saying no. I'm not saying he's a Pro Bowler. I'm not saying he's some great talent, but he was at one point a highly touted prospect. Sometimes that second home will help you. Again, I'm not saying put this guy in on 1st and 10 week 1 and feed him to the wolves. No, don't do that. I genuinely think it's going to be Quinnen, Noddy, and then it's going to be JFM, maybe
JFM. You mean JJ?
Or JJ, excuse me. Wrong acronym.
Yeah.
And then maybe Michael Clemens on the other side. Like, that's going to be your first down base 4-3 until Tyler Barron figures it out. So yeah, you can get hung up on defensive tackle, but I don't know, man. Azareye'h Thomas, freaking extreme value, and Malachi Moore, which we can get into. I love this player. Like, I wrote him up in the 2022 spring game. I have a notebook down here of all the spring games back in 2022 and 23. Malachi Moore is written up in both. At first, he's a corner, and then he's a safety, and there's just plus signs all over my notes for this guy.
Nice. Yeah. Darian Mathis was my line in the sand of the copium. Yeah. When you read that potential starting defensive line, I'm like, yeah, it's probably not gonna be very good. Like, if Noddy and Clemens are two of your starters, it's not good. That doesn't sound great. It is what it is. But I'm hopeful for Leonard Taylor. Like, Leonard Taylor is one player that I do have some hope for. Yeah, like on to, I guess we'll go to Thomas and more now, since we were touched on Davis, all the two defensive backs. With Azareye'h Thomas, like, this secondary needed a fucking killer. That's what it really needed. Because let's call it what it is. Sauce is a very good corner. Sauce is finesse. All right, he just is. My main gripe with Sauce, like the coverage, his coverage drop off was greatly exaggerated. He was still like, he went from being maybe the second best cover corner in the NFL to like the 12th best last year. He was still good in coverage. It's not even the missed tackles with Sauce, which are frustrating, but those have come in like a cluster of like 5 games. He just missed a bunch for his career. It's not that bad. Sauce is very willing to let a blocker escort him out of the play in run defense.
Yes.
He's very willing to not just get in there. And like DJ Reed didn't do that. DJ Reed hit, man.
Facing the
Sauce, like, you can't Deion Sanders didn't do that. Okay, well, once Sauce becomes Deion Sanders, then he can not do that too. But until then, you got to stick your nose in there in the run game. It's non-negotiable. It's going to be non-negotiable for Aaron Glenn. Like, you have to be able to do that. And as Azareye'h Davis, he does that. Now maybe Jackson Hawes got, or Azareye'h Thomas, he does that. Maybe Jackson Hawes got his goat a couple times. But yeah, man, he hits like a safety. He's super physical, and I know he had the slow 40 times, so that's definitely why he dropped. Like, look, if he ran low 4.4s, he's probably being taken in the Buffalo Bills at the end of the first round, right?
Instead of Maxwell Hairston, 100%.
Yeah, he drops because of that. Now, obviously, when you get beat deep as a corner, you get beat deep often at the line of scrimmage. You're released, like they miss you. You gain leverage, and you're gone. And he is so physical and instinctive, and his ability to mirror and his length and his technique already at age 20, where he doesn't really get beat deep a ton because he's not allowing you to get to that spot where you can separate. Now, all corners try to press and miss. All corners guess on a slant, and it's a sluggo, and you have to have that recovery speed. So yeah, that is a legitimate limitation, and that's why he's a 3rd round pick instead of going, maybe late day 1. And I do think, to me, I know Stevens is like, it's like the joke. I actually tweeted out, I'm like, oh wait, Stevens isn't a corner or a safety. He's a defensive tackle. That's why they didn't draft any. But
I did see that.
We're so desperate to make Stevens the safety. I think he's the corner. Let's be honest, dude. If they paid him $12 million to play safety, that would be even dumber than signing him, overpaying him at corner. Because why didn't you just sign Justin Reed for $10 million? Why didn't you? Why would he be making almost like 40% more than Cisco to play safety? It wouldn't make sense. So I think he's the corner, and Thomas comes in as the immediate backup boundary corner who is going to play specials. And then you're looking halfway through his rookie contract. He needs to be a starter. That's one where I can't do the thing with like with Smith, where maybe he could be a sub package, a special teamer. Pick 73 is too high. That guy's got to be a starter by halfway through his rookie contract. And I think this was just a corner as a head coach who just wanted who just fell in love with a defensive back and was too smitten with him that once Kyle Williams is gone, it's like, you know what? We're not going to reach for position. This kid's too good. We're going to take him. And he put some hair on the chest of that secondary, which was shaved and lotioned the past couple of years. This is soft. It was a very soft unit, man.
Soft is an easy way to put it too. But
yeah,
no, he definitely brings that tenacity, that willingness to come up and hit. I've seen him like on quarterback power and quarterback draws. He would come up and hit really hard. That was the Georgia Tech game. AG talked about his two-hand punch at the line of scrimmage. It feels like most corners do the one-hand punch and turn and go. He's really good at doing the two-hand punch, and AG admittedly said that that's not something that he had in his bag as a cornerback, as a technique. So the two-hand punch for Azareye'h Thomas is good. Obviously, you can miss sometimes, and when you miss with two hands going forward versus one, you're really missing.
Yeah.
So there are instances. Yeah, it's pretty boomer bust for sure. But I wrote down boundary corner, press man, major. Took the bait on one double move against Miami and recovered okay. I don't think the pass was complete, but he recovered okay. There was only one like egregiously bad play I saw on his entire film over 2 or 3 games, or 3 games in a Senior Bowl practice. The Senior Bowl practices I watched. It looked like it was supposed to be he was the cover 2 cloud corner, so the guy just sitting a couple yards off the field or off the line of scrimmage. And it looked like there was a miscommunication or a lapse, and he took a deep third as if it was a cover 3, and he left the tight end in the flat. And Cam Ward easily checked it down to the tight end, put a little move on AZ Thomas, and Thomas just kind of fell over in his spot. Like, it was a really bad rep, and it was only just one rep, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but it was a little bit of a wart where it seemed like he knew he messed up the coverage and then tried to overcompensate and come downhill and make the tackle, and then just got juked out of his sneakers. So it's one of those situations with him. Somebody on Twitter called him a developmental corner. I don't think he's developmental. I genuinely think he has the tools that if Stevens is struggling by week 6, AZ could come in. Like, I do think that, and that's where the Stevens flexibility comes into play. I don't think it's going to be, oh my goodness, AZ is so good, Stevens, go back and play safety now. I do think it's going to be Stevens first and then AZ, but I don't even think it's going to take to the end of his rookie contract or even halfway through his rookie contract. Like, I think as early as week 6 to 8 this year, and if not by camp next year, he is competing to be the cornerback 2 opposite Sauce. And then you look at the fact that they only allow like 200 coverage yards all last season. It's just stupid. Like, if you put him and Sauce across from each other, maybe the ball production isn't there. He didn't have a single interception in 2024. But AG coaches you to turn your head around 3 yards sooner than you normally would. And I know Ulbrich and Saleh never taught our corners to turn their head around. They just played through the hands of the receiver, which is a fine technique. It just doesn't, it's not conducive for ball production and interceptions and takeaways. If we can get these guys to turn their head just a second earlier, locate the football and go up and get it, shit, you got tall, long, lengthy corners that are able to turn their hips and run with you. Who cares what the 4.58 40 time said? He can turn his hips so fluidly and run deep. I love AZ Thomas, and like, he might actually be my favorite pick of the entire draft class.
Yeah, I think there's a good shot that 3-4 years from now, when we're looking back at this class, like, he's the second best player besides Membu. There's definitely a world in which that happens. Yeah, with Stevens, to me, it's like, man, did you have to give the guy 2 years guaranteed? But that's my thing, because now, like, it's like, I wonder next year, he'll probably be starting because of the guaranteed money, but a year or two, AZ Thomas could probably be as good or better than Stevens. Like, who are you competing with for that contract, AG? But yeah, AZ Thomas is and him and Sauce, probably their wingspan combined to be like over 13 feet, which could be an NFL record. There you go, long corners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the other defensive back that they grabbed was Malachi Moore, who definitely felt like a very after the Smith, everyone's panicking. They swing around, they get this kid, they move up in the fourth round. It's like another one like Mason Taylor, where it's like, okay, about where he was supposed to be drafted and fills a position of need. Like perfectly solid pick. And looking at this safety room now, he is coming in. He has 5 college seasons, so he's gonna be 24 when the season starts. So maybe he's a lower ceiling prospect. But then I'm thinking like, okay, if you're coming in at 24 years old and our other safety, our Pendleton starting safety is Tony Adams, like I don't know if Malachi Moore is not the week 1 starting safety. I wouldn't be shocked next to Cisco.
No, I think you almost have to consider him being the favorite to be the starting safety opposite Cisco in week 1. Truly, it baffles me how Tony Adams went from being benched by the owner, not a coach, by the owner, to somehow still on this team with the new regime. Like, it just truly baffles my
Woody
mind that
doesn't remember
he
that happened. Woody has no idea that he did that. He already forgot about
oh,
that.
I don't think Woody remembers much at this age, but
No.
it is crazy how he's the holdover. Like, I thought it could have been like a Jarius Monroe type from last year, like a practice
Yeah.
squad stash that gets
It was a
elevated and
decent chunk of
whatever.
change too on that tender. I think he got like $3 million.
Yeah, it was not like a insignificant amount of money.
Yeah.
Although I do think he is going to be the third safety. I think Malachi Moore, he is more of the free safety type. I think a lot of the scouting reports are mixed on him because of his snap distribution. He played a ton down by the line of scrimmage, almost like a pseudo nickel in certain packages. He was like a hook curl defender in cover 2 when they have 2 deep and 5 underneath. He would usually, sometimes he'd be the split safety or the single high, the post safety, but he'd come down in the box and play the hook curls too. To me, I don't know if this is going to be like, I know he mentioned Brian Branch when talking about him. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Brian Branch. He also was picked 2.5 rounds later than Brian
Right.
Branch. So if you get, like I said, the bowl and basket, great value version of Brian Branch out of Malachi Moore, I think all is well. But a couple years ago, man, he was highly, thought of as a really good corner slash nickel slash safety prospect. So for him to slip all the way to pick 130, he kind of flew under the radar this draft process, but every time I kept circling back to his name, even in like mock drafts, I'm like, damn, like I don't know if this is where he's gonna go in the actual draft in like round 3, 4, 5. But damn, I feel like he would be a steal. So for the Jets to get him, I had a lot of fun watching his tape. The Missouri tape, I write pluses or minuses next to my notes. Obviously, plus is a positive, negative, minus is a negative. I have 6 notes written down from the Missouri game, not one single negative. And I'm not saying
Nice.
everything was perfect from him, but it didn't seem like his
That's what you get
negatives.
for playing Brady Cook's offense.
It was, yeah, and it wasn't even Brady Cook. It was their
Oh
backup.
gosh. Oh no.
And their backup is atrocious. I think his name is Pyne, Pyne. Dude, god awful. He threw like one of the most duck interceptions to Malachi Moore ever, and he had like a huge like 35-yard return after the pick. And I don't know, that game specifically, Missouri, like he gave Luther Burden some fits. He jumped the wide receiver screen. He shot downhill, kind of sifted through the 2 blockers and made a really nice tackle on Burden. Twice that happened. Again, not afraid to put his face in the fan, get involved in the run game. There was a miscommunication where a vertical route kind of broke free in the middle of the field, and he turned and ran with that vertical receiver. Like he knew that somebody messed up. Maybe it was him, maybe it was the teammate, but he was the one that recovered and picked up and made up for it. And I thought he turned and ran real well. A great communicator on the back end, team captain, another great deep coverage route against Burden. I wrote turn his head around quicker. The ball like hit him in the back, like in the nameplate. So if he turned his head around, it probably could have been probably a pick, but he was in Burden's hip pocket all the way 40 yards down the field. So I had a great time watching Malachi Moore versus Missouri. And yeah, I think this is starter caliber. So we've already talked about 2 potential starters, Membu and Taylor, we would assume out the gates. Azariah, a future starter. Aren Smith, probably the developmental rotation guy. And then Malachi Moore, another starter. So we're talking about potentially 4 starters out of your first 5 picks. Maybe the last two don't come on until the back end of their rookie contract. But you get 4 years with these guys for a reason. If it doesn't click in the first 20, 25 games, you still have another 45, 55 game sample size to make up for it. So I'm really excited about these guys on the back end. Like I said, you have 6 capable dudes now. Like Cisco's kind of interchangeable. I'd consider him more of a free than a strong safety, and so is Malachi Moore. But if they can be any type of versatile, Cisco comes down in the box, Moore comes down in the box. Don't look at his size and think he can't do it. Like he can do it, and he is feisty as all hell. So I had a lot of fun watching Malachi Moore in the last couple days.
Yeah, he just rings as a, like you said, a prototypical split safety, right? With maybe not the range to be the free or the size to be the thumper, but when everything you read about him is like super high football IQ, very, very smart, like make all those intangible traits making up for maybe not the most elite physical tools. And it's so interesting because the last two safeties we've kind of tried to run out there as younger guys were Ashton Davis and Tony Adams, who are the opposite, who are like the as high of RAS
Full of
score
range
as you could
and
possibly have at the position, but just
yeah.
couldn't figure out how to take angles and diagnose and play football. So the defense
angles, dude. Those angles by Ashton, man. And that's what's going to change. That's definitely going to change with Cisco and Moore. Like Moore takes smart angles. He's a very instinctive player. He's good at breaking off a coverage, like a check down and going to another position if he sees it's open in zone coverage. Like he's a very smart player. So I hope that, yeah, angles in the run game are one thing that does not hinder us from that position.
right. And I think he's like he could be a good buzz defender in cover 3. You could probably pick up the 5th eligible if you're in cover 1. I think there's a world in which, like, let's say he is I say like a similar role to Brandon to Isaiah Oliver. You just hope he's better, like, because I
Yeah,
think
for
he could
sure.
be. I think immediately, like, if he doesn't start, I hope he starts, man. Like, I hope he's better than to me. Like, again, I know you're a rookie, but if you're 24 years old, I just think you should, as a 4th round pick, maybe you should be better than Tony Adams right away.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
for sure.
I think that's a fair ask, man. Like,
Between one of the safety spots or if Michael Carter gets hurt, this guy is going to see the field
that's exactly what I'm
early and
saying. Like, he could
often.
back up. I think he could back up if he worst case scenario, if he loses the starting safety job, I think he could back up 3 spots in your
Yeah.
defensive backfield and play special teams. But he should be start unless Tony Adams has some sort of resurgence where he's way better than he's been. Moore comes in and I think definitely raises the floor because he's like limits the damage of explosives, right? When you make
100%.
those really big mental errors where you don't take the right angle, like even if you don't take the right angle, you don't make the tackle. If you take such a bad angle that it I don't need to explain to people how bad the safeties have been in giving up explosive plays in this defense, especially against the run game. It's been an underrated part of why they've been bad. So, man, Moore and Cisco, like, I mean, those guys aren't exactly Ed Reed and Ronnie Lott, but that could quite easily be the best safety tandem we've had since like Jamal Adams and Marcus May, just because we haven't
Oh
invested
yeah.
in the position. We just haven't invested in that position, and it's
I was going to go back to Kerry Rhodes and was it? We had one of the Landry brothers at that time, maybe.
yeah, well, it was Leonard. There was Rhodes and Leonard
Oh
for a year,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But like
and
that's
then they
like that's what
replaced.
I think of with good duos. I completely
Yeah,
forget about Jamal and Marcus.
I mean, yeah. Well, it was interesting. Like they took the safeties first and second, but they ended up being like the best 2 players on our team for a little while, and then obviously it
Yeah.
all went to crap. But yeah, Leonard and Rhodes were good stylistically. Then they thought they could put in Aren Smith and have like 2 5'9" white safeties. Like just didn't work
The
out as
Rex
well.
Ryan effect.
Yeah, that didn't go as well. But yeah, this is definitely a pick where, yeah, man, come in and start right away, right? Because like again, the Aren Smith, the cope take of Aren Smith of the floor, that can't be every pick, right? It's just you can bake that into a draft class and it can be okay. But it's not like, oh, Smith is a backup at special teams. Thomas is a backup at special teams. Moore is about no. Like you got like two of those 3 got to be starters, right? So and Moore, I think there is an immediate path to it being a right away. Definitely, and they're definitely, you could tell they're prioritizing like guys who they think are going to be good culture fits and guys that they think that they can coach. Like you talk about Smith, that was, and it's one of those things where you're like, oh man, great. He's a great kid and we can coach him, but he can't catch. Okay, that's fair enough. But I'll say this: Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore were were a lot better prospects than Aren Smith, but they didn't have it between the years, and it was their downfall. Denzel Mims couldn't handle that we signed a depth receiver to compete with him. That happened, and he ate bad fish, and that took him out of the league. Elijah Moore is still a free agent, not because there are 102 wide receivers in the NFL better than him, because he's a wide receiver 3/4, and people don't want a wide receiver 3/4. That's not a good culture fit. So
Mm-hmm.
they're clearly they want to have guys who they feel like they can coach, because look, our coaches weren't good the past couple of years, but we also drafted some players that just, I mean, those two stick out to me specifically as like they just didn't. I don't know. I question their full commitment to their craft. I'll leave it at that.
Yes. I don't want to say they're uncoachable players.
Right.
But when the talent is there and then the production and everything else doesn't come along with it, it kind of raises flags as to what exactly is going on behind the scenes on practice fields and meeting rooms, whatever it is. And I think it's interesting. Not Malachi Moore, Elijah Moore just got placed an undrafted free agent tender by the Browns because he met with the Bills. And it's this rare circumstance where you can put a tender on a guy and he still will count for the comp pick formula. Again, I don't know. Maybe Elijah Moore will bring them back like a 6th round comp pick based on whatever contract he gets. I don't see it being lucrative, but yeah, this is the first time I think Moore has had a visit in quite a while. And it's the Bills who, like, I feel like on paper, they always need a wide receiver, but they just kind of make it work. So definitely an interesting one with him that he's still available, but it does go to show that if Aren Smith can, develop as a talent, but it has everything in between the ears, then yeah, I think it'll be the inverse of what we've seen.
Should we change our the podcast to the Aren Smith Show?
Yeah. I think anybody creating a YouTube channel should just call themselves the Aryan Truthers.
Well, that could get a little dicey.
Oh shit, dude! I didn't even think about that. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
know that.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, yeah, it's funny too because he does the name Aren Smith. It doesn't do many favors because it just, not for that reason, but because it just sounds like one of those long list of Jets mid-round wide receiver flops. Like you throw in, like we're talking about Aren Smith in 3 years as one of those flops, whereas Azariah Thomas, like, dude, that's a Pro Bowl defensive back, right? So the name test not too great with Aren Smith. Could have done better, but it is what it is. It's what his mama gave him, and it's all good. So now we have new Chaz Surratt. We had old Chaz Surratt. Now we have new Chaz Surratt in Kiko. We have an upgraded Chaz Surratt, hopefully. That's just exactly what I thought of. I'm like, this is a guy who's going to make the roster for the next 5 years because of special teams. Maybe he could be a starter, but that's kind of what I thought.
I sidebar, I had to type in his name in PFF just to get some analytics in front of me. And I typed in Maui Goa because I didn't want to do the first name. And I assumed there's not many Maui Goas in college football. There's 3. There is Francisco, who is him. There is Francis, who is a tackle on Miami. So we have Francis and Francisco. And then there's Frederick Maui Goa. So could be very confusing to get all those names straight. I don't know if Francis is his brother, but they both played for Miami. I don't know a ton about this guy. I'll be completely honest. He was a shock pick to me. The thing I wrote down, best case scenario, is maybe he can work in to be your base 4-3, linebacker who's completely different than Quincy and Jamie Sherwood. Also different than Jamin Davis, I think, in that, he's a little bit bigger. He's 6'3", 230. But my hope is that he's either the base 4-3 package guy, or he is your special teams ace. Like, that's really all I can, come up with this guy. I don't know a ton about what he does on film. I am going to study him and the other Miami guy, Barron, later on this week. But I wanted to get through the rounds 1 through 5 guys who I thought would actually make an immediate or more immediate impact on the team.
Yeah, here's another spot where I was hoping for a defensive tackle again. And he was the only player they drafted who I didn't know who he was when the name was called, so I had to go look him up. And part of this first draft, I think you're seeing some of the growing pains of having a new regime because like if let's say that the Jets still had the same front office and coaching staff from last year, not saying that they should, but let's just say, and they're really confident in Quantez Stiggers, they probably don't draft AZ Thomas, right?
Mhm.
And look, I think AZ Thomas is a better prospect than Stiggers, but I'm just saying, and then maybe they pick some other position that we could play right away.
Right.
If they drafted Zaire Barnes and they really liked him and they got to see him practice for 2 years, maybe they don't take Maui Goa. So
Mhm.
there's a little bit that's just kind of part of it, right? So yeah, I don't, and I really, again, I have nothing. I'm not going to pretend like I know any much about the guy other than looking him up and seeing he's pretty athletic, and it seems like he could be. Well, the thing is, the third linebacker spot is pretty much wide open, so I guess he could win that. If they do go in 4-3 looks, he's out there, which would be like what 12% of the snaps, and then plays on
Yeah.
specials. Okay, 5th round pick. All right, I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being his role, just because he's competing with the list of guys that you mentioned, where it's like just pretty much fringe roster bubble guys behind the 2 starters.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I mean, he's gonna push Marcelino McCreary Ball and Zaire Barnes. Like that's what he's gonna do. It's like it's a 5th round pick, guys. Like it's not something where it's like, oh my god, this guy has to hit the ground running and be Ray freaking Lewis
Yeah,
back there. No,
you got to
he's
get
gonna
some of those. Like to be a
yeah.
good team, you got to pop on something. You got to get a Michael Carter or Jamie and Sherwood every now and then. It's really
From
honestly, it's the 3rd and 4th round that have killed the
yeah,
last regime. Yeah,
yeah.
outside of the rounds, specifically rounds 3 and 4, Joe Douglas had like an adequate hit rate. It just those rounds killed the solid Douglas
Absolutely.
era in
And
an unbelievable way.
and let's just play like stars and scrubs of this draft class. Your first 3
Right.
picks, they all become starters in their first contract with the Jets. Then your next 4, Smith, Moore, Maui Goa, and Barron, they all become Chris Banjo's best friends. And they're all good special teams players. That's
We're gonna
fine,
have the best
right?
special teams in the
But
NFL.
that's okay because a couple weeks ago, a lot of people were speculating that this class was going to be quote unquote for the special teams coaches. Because once you get to rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 in this class specifically, that talent drop off where maybe prospect 10 and prospect 45 were very close. After prospect 150, it got really, scary hours, and it's going to be a lot of developmental special teams types. And we're not trying to pump too much copium, but I do think it's important to know that about the class. If you come away with core special teams players, like guys that are going to replace Ashton Davis, Sam Aguavin, who are the other gunners that were really good? Why am I blanking on him? But those gunners that have been really good, like if any of these guys can fill in
Oh,
those
Hardy.
roles, thank you. And you don't have to spend millions of dollars on a gunner. Yes, Justin Hardy was a great player, but if this eliminates you from spending $5 to $6 million in free agency to fix your special teams, that's a positive to me. So I'm not looking at it like these guys need to start, but if they just become core special teams guys, Chris Banjo's best friends, excuse me, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a way for them to contribute right away. I do think like if you're being viewed as exclusively a special teamer, I don't think you should be drafted in round 5. I think that should be like
No,
round
no.
7
Only the
UDFA.
Miami
So
guys, I would say, could be exclusive special teams guys. But Moore and Smith, you have to hope that they
right.
start out at specials and get on to whatever side of the ball they play.
I would say even the Miami guys, because still to me like
Okay.
round 5, I think you should be hoping to get at least like with Barron like an edge who could
Hmm.
play 18% of the snaps and whatever, have 2 or 3 sacks, and then play special teams. Like to me,
Hmm.
if it's just like I'm drafting you in the 5th round, like then you better be like an elite special teamer that is, would make 3-4 million on the open market to play specials, maybe.
Yeah.
But with Barron, I think that's another spot where there is a pathway to immediate playing time if he's good, because behind the 2 guys, JJ and Will, like Michael Clemens is slated to play a big role on this team, and I'm hoping I throw Barron kind of in there with Watson McGregor. Like, can one of you pop and be the
Hmm.
third edge? But he's an interesting one. Now he played across the front in Miami. I don't think he's big enough to do that in the NFL. So I think he'll just be a full-time edge, which is fine. That was another one where it was a position of need, and that was about where he's projected to go. So, fine. And he did have a lot of his sacks against one pretty bad team, but he kind of popped when he got the chance to play in true pass sets a lot on the edge last year. After his first 2 seasons, they kind of moved him around a lot. So I'm trying to think of a player comp like in recent Jets that would be suitable for a return on investment for him, but I can't really think of one because they've either had really good edges or just terrible ones. But again, if he can play 15% of the snaps, get a couple of sacks and play specials, hopefully by year 2, you're the third edge, like better than Michael Clemens, because there's no competition for you. But yeah, in the mix with Watts. Watts is someone I think Glenn is going to like, by the way.
Yeah, no, I definitely think Watts or McGregor, one of those two is certainly going to become a favorite of AG as far as like the backups go. And if Tyler Barron is that guy, like you said, I think that's fine too. We need somebody to compete with Clemens to get his ass off the roster. He was one of my top 4 guys that I will not stand to watch in a predominant role in 2025. So even if Tyler Barron can do a little bit of that and take away a couple reps from him every game and slowly eat away and become that third edge, like you said, 6'5", 260, he's more of the large, hulking defensive end that we were kind of clamoring for and not necessarily that pass rush specialist type of guy. So you can see you can see the plan, and I'll put it in air quotes again. You can see the plan for Barron if he hits and does everything well. If he's just a special teams guy at first, that's okay too. But yeah, I definitely could see him over Maui Goa trying to force his way onto the field ahead of some of these guys on the depth chart. Like Maui Goa is no better than the middle linebacker or linebacker 3. Even if he's very good. Like, I don't think he's going to overtake Sherwood. He's not going to overtake Quincy.
No.
But Barron can overtake Watts, McGregor, and Clemens all in year 1 with his potential. So, yeah, I do like it. I'm really excited to dig into his film. He played at Tennessee for 3 years. I just found that out looking at PFF. So I think that's cool, too. I'll go back and look at that because they had some really top-end pass rushers in James Pierce and Omar Norman Lott. So maybe it was just a case of like he was getting kind of buried on the D line there. So he moved over to Miami. Miami's defense, man, it was kind of tough to watch in certain points, but but I'm excited to go watch and learn about him because like I said, I do think he could take over Clemens. And if that's, all he does, I think that's a net positive.
That's a win. Yeah, right. Because with Maui Goa, like they don't rotate at linebacker. Like Quincy and Sherwood are going to play 95% of the snaps. So it would just be certain sub packages. But at edge, especially with Jermaine coming off the Achilles and McDonald, the player that you'd prefer to see in more passing situations, like there is a lot of reps up for grabs at edge. And hopefully Barron can get some of those, or Watts or McGregor. I think that was a pretty good grab by last year's front office with those defensive linemen. I know not a lot of them did a lot year 1, but they were players who we all were expected to be drafted. And I think, especially Leonard Taylor, I think has a real shot to make an impact. So hopefully Barron can join there too.
Yeah, so Leonard Taylor has been, hyping himself up this offseason, posting all his workouts and everything like that. I don't know if this was coincidence or not, but right before the draft, he was on Twitter posting his workouts. And then right after the draft, right after the Jets didn't take any interior defensive linemen, he changed his profile picture to a picture of him in his uniform. So I didn't know if there was like some, what are we going to do at my position type of thing. And I'm sorry, maybe this is just me finally being older than these prospects by too many years. That shit's so old to me, dude. Like, when we were flirting with Ezekiel Elliott and Breece Hall was like, we're all good over here, man. Like that shit's so
compete, be better than him and put his ass on the bench.
Yes.
Should be your mentality.
Make them sign Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook for $8 million and force him to sit on the fucking bench. Like that's my
Breece got in his feelings when they drafted Michael Carter.
Yeah, and then they
became no, maybe it was the other way around. Michael Carter didn't like that they drafted Breece.
Yeah, but then they became friends, and Breece Hall stood up to him when Michael Carter got in Taylor Embry's face on the sideline. Brees Hall was right there stepping up for him. So it's like you just never know when you get these guys all in the room, and it just looks soft to not like, oh, this is my spot. You can't come in and take my reps. Like, no, go compete.
Yeah, right. Because good teams have like depth and multiple good players. It's even and I think it's, I know Garrett is like beyond reproach. I didn't use him great. I know like the quarterback last year maybe didn't target him enough. Like but he was heavily involved in the offense a lot. He got a lot of targets, and look, Devontae Adams is a really good player. I hope the Jets eventually have other elite pass catchers next to you. You gotta be able to share the workload. It just is what it is. Like it can't just be you're upset because there's another high volume receiver. I know it was more than that. They were losing, it all sucked, but
Sure.
yeah, I think that was a I don't know. I guess I think a lot of those things that became social media things previously, I think if they're just winning, a lot of those things don't happen. I really think it's that
Yeah.
simple.
That's
I know we
that's the way to
overanalyze
say
it, but if the team's winning, besides Elijah Moore, who quit on his team during a winning streak, like besides that, I think these guys are just sick of losing.
Yeah,
I really think that'll fix a
100%.
lot of it.
And one more stat on Tyler Barron that I think is important to note. Of all the combine defensive linemen, so edges and tackles, Tyler Barron had the fourth fastest 10-yard split at 1.62. The three names ahead of him, James Pierce Jr., first round pick, Shamar Stewart, first round pick, and Fadil Diggs from Syracuse, who I believe was a fourth round pick. So he's in pretty high company up here with his his get off 1.61 that shows his get off, and he's super explosive. Jumped over 10 feet in the broad, 35 and a half inches in the vertical as well. So definitely a highly explosive player based on these numbers, and that's why I'm excited to see if he has anything that can kick Michael Clemens off the field, because I feel like Michael Clemens runs like he's got muck boots in 4 feet of cement. So I think Barron can run a little bit better.
Well, if there was one trait that you'd like to be elite at for a day 3 edge, I think the first step would be the one I'd pick. So that makes me
100%.
feel
Yep.
better about Barron for sure. So the two final things, we'll talk just really quick about maybe some free agents that the Jets could add, because right now it's after 4 p.m. on the Monday after the draft. So players that are signed now will not impact the comp pick formula. But Dylan, I also have to ask you, have you seen this 100 men versus gorilla debate?
I saw Mr. Beast asking for
He's going to ruin it.
participants or volunteers. I don't know what the whole trend of it is. I assume it's something very internet and not something I would enjoy, but I'm willing to hear it.
It's very internet. So my audience, who is on average about 12 years older than us, will probably not. It's probably for the we're actually I'm too old to know what it is, to be fair.
Right.
But some guy randomly tweeted that he thought 100 men, if they were really committed, could beat a silverback gorilla with their bare hands, and it's just becoming this whole thing. So I gotta ask you, Dylan, if you were to pick one jet, and you could have 100 of them, 100 of any jet to defeat a gorilla, which jet would you want to make 100 clones of to do that?
The current jet.
Yeah, current jet on the roster.
You know, it's so shitty.
Is it Clemens?
It's fucking Michael Clemens. He's the only one that looks like a WWE superstar. Like, he's the only one I feel like can intimidate a silverback gorilla by his septum piercing. Like, he doesn't even need to show up with the barbed wire bat. Like, I genuinely think I'm taking Michael Clemens, and I hate to say that.
Oh man, look, I'll tell you what.
Were you gonna
100
say Clemens too?
I mean, I think 100 Quinn Williams would send
He was my
Harambe's cousin to his maker, man. Like,
He was my next. That's 3,000 pounds or
3,000 pounds, or like John
30,000
Simpson,
pounds.
30,000. Yeah, because it's 2 more zeros. So 30,000 pounds of Simpson, man. That gorilla is not going to stand a chance. That's for the 8% of the audience that listen to this long in the video. That's
Shout
what
out
you
to
stay
the older
for.
demo though. That's great.
Yeah, YouTube shows you. Well, it's like it's funny. It's like 98.5% male, and the other 1.5% is like dudes listening to it on their wife's account or whatever. And a little bit from the UK, like 7% from the UK,
Hell
and then
yeah.
yeah, and then yeah, the Gen X is the main demo with the boomers not too far behind, man. Yeah, so I
I
think
love
that's
it.
probably maybe just retired and you maybe have more time to listen. But yeah, not too many young kids listening to the channel, which is cool because then we get to learn things from the comments about like other older players and Jets history and all that stuff. But
Right.
now, is there anyone that's sticking out to you as still a free agent who could come in and help this team out?
Um, Let me look at the ones that are
I
still available.
I like Zadarius Smith. I don't know
Yes.
how much money he's going to command. I just think that's a good fit. Defensive tackle is disgusting. There's just nothing, man. There's just absolutely nothing there. That's probably like better than even Derek Nowdy, who they're probably going to roll with. I mean,
Right. No, yeah, there's really no names. I mean, Quentin Jefferson, he's still out there.
yeah,
Um, I
he
don't think
fell
we're gonna
off.
do
He doesn't
that.
help your run defense, though.
No, I don't think we would do that either. Yeah, this is actually a really bad list. Like, if you don't
It's
want
gross.
Linval Joseph or
He's like
Jonathan
37.
Hankins, who combined age is 70 years old, like, I don't know, man. This is a tough one. Maybe a wide receiver. Let's go look at wideouts because I know who is it? Keenan Allen is still available, so there's at least
Yeah,
a body
the
there.
Steelers just signed Robert Woods,
Yeah, I
who's
saw it was like
a
three
body.
million or something like that. That's literally a
Yeah,
body. Keenan Cooper, Chark, I guess. No, dude, this is bad. You might just have to sit put if you don't want one of these veteran guys, which is probably, out of the range monetarily that you'd want to pay cuz like even on like a 1 year upwards of 8 to 10 million dollars, I think is probably overpaying for these guys at this point. Um it's almost I don't know. I don't think there's anybody else. I'm not saying you can't add, but you'd really gotta scour this free agency to find a guy worth giving the
there's not
dollars
a
to.
guy that you feel like is guaranteed to make the team if you sign him. Like there's guys who you feel like could compete,
Right. It would literally
for a
just be
start
Keenan
for a
Allen and
roster
Amari
spot.
Cooper are the only people I think could come in and be on the
Right.
team. Maybe Tyler
Which
Boyd, but again,
I
like Boyd is like Josh Reynolds.
exactly. I don't think Keenan and Amari are going to want to come to the Jets number one and two.
No, maybe if you
I
get rid
don't
of
see.
Lazard, it adds, allure to like, okay, now there's definitely a clear path to one of those guys being the wide receiver too. But with Corley and Smith already, like, I don't know, it's tough to sell like the role for
And
those
it's going to
guys.
be a very low volume passing offense. I think just one of like it's not like let's just call it what it is. It's the Jets aren't the first place a wide receiver with any kind of options is going to want to sign
Yeah.
right now. Like that's just kind of it's all right. We could say it is what it is.
Would you
Um,
kick the tires on Jedrick Wills?
I don't think so because if we didn't draft Membu, I would have.
Sure.
If we didn't come away with a tackle in the first 2 rounds, I definitely would have called him up. But I think at this point, I think he might have an option. He's going to probably want to go somewhere where he can at least compete to start. Because if he
Yeah.
comes here, he's not playing over Membu, he's not playing over Olu. So,
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
fair.
that's obviously he's better than Carter Warren. So yeah, he'd be an upgrade if he wants to come be a backup. But I think he probably wants to go somewhere where he compete to start.
Yeah, I would
Tight end,
assume he
like
wants
there's
to
Gerald
start.
Everett.
Yeah.
Because they're going to
I would
roster
assume
4 tight ends. So I wonder if they'll add another tight end. I don't know.
I hope they add at least one more. I don't think Kuntz or Neil Johnson has any juice to do
Yeah.
anything. Even if it's a camp body, fourth and fifth guy to add on, I don't think that's a bad idea. Back with the Wills thing though, like quitting on your team definitely doesn't help your case. Or making a business decision, I should say, and pulling yourself out of a game. So maybe a starting role isn't in the cards for him, but yeah, you would assume with his talent and age, he would want to play and be a starter somewhere. Tight end is abysmal, dude. This is gross.
It's bad. It's bad. Um,
Mercedes
yeah.
Lewis, who's almost 41 years old, big dog. We can get him. We need a blocker.
Yeah, I don't think they've added any tight ends as UDFAs yet. as of yet. That was a spot where I thought they could have maybe drafted 2.
I thought they were going to double up and get 2. Maybe the board fell in a way where they, after the Azareye'h Thomas pick, they realized like they weren't going to be able to double up because
Well, I
they.
think trading up to like once you didn't have
Oh
those
yeah,
6
they
round
traded up
picks.
twice for Moore and Barron, right?
Right.
Yeah, no,
So
that
if they had
definitely.
those 2 other picks, maybe they could have came away with 1, but
Do you kick the tires on Von Miller, or did he sign with the?
no. He I mean, it just seems like the Keenan Allen and Von Miller are just so antithetical to the type of player they've been trying to bring in. So I just don't think they're going to look at those. I don't think they're going to want to sign anyone over 30 unless
100%.
it's Zadarius Smith.
What about
So
Foley Fatukasi? He's 30.1
bring him
years old.
home. Bring him home. I would bring
That's
Foley home. I don't know if he's
what I'm
good
saying.
anymore, but
I don't know either. But he's one of the reunions, the rare reunions on this team that I would gladly welcome back.
absolutely. All right, buddy. We appreciate you hanging out. Dylan Tereman, what do you got going on Jet Nation these days?
Yeah, we'll be doing our recap show. Shout out to Glenn. He covered the entire draft on our site. I was doing Jake's show on night 2, so Glenn held it down. Glenn held it down all day 3. So shout out to him. We'll be going over the class, probably doing, a lot of the same things we're doing here, not giving a grade because I don't necessarily believe in a letter grade for them, but going over the film, seeing where we can, have a plan for any of these guys. I'll probably try to put an Aren Smith video out on the channel. I'm going to try to put it all together if I can figure out how to slideshow the clips together instead of screen sharing and pulling it down and screen sharing and pulling it down. So got to get a little bit more technical on the YouTube side of things, but I'm trying to put out a couple videos of these prospects. And most people that watch this probably watch Jake on Tuesdays. So I'll be on Jake's show tomorrow afternoon as well, breaking down the picks. So lots of pod spots coming up for your boy.
Well deserved, my man. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. If you want to hit the thumbs up on your way out, that'd be cool. And go, you're a Jet.